Hare Krishna. I'll just say some Bhagavatam prayers before we start discussing these two shlokas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam namaskritye naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udiriyet nashtaprayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavad sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki krishnaya vasudevaya devaki nandanaya cha nandagopa kumaraya govindaya namo namah. Hare Krishna. So I was assigned these two verses from Queen Kunti's prayers, 1.8.29 and 30. First of all, I seek blessings of all the worshipable devotees in the conference call. I hope I'll be able to convey the correct message. And if I make any mistakes, they are completely mine. I heard a couple of Prabhupada's lectures from which I'm presenting these two verses. I could not hear much more, but based on Prabhupada's purport here and his lectures from 1973 in LA, I'm giving my presentation. So I'll start with recitation. नावेद कश्चेद् भगवांश्चिकीर्षितं तवेहमानस्य नृणां विडम्बनम् नायस्य कश्चिद् दयितोऽस्ति कर्हि चेत् द्वेष्याश्च यस्मिन् विश्वामते नृणाम्. Translation. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and so are misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. Hare Krishna. So we have read this purport together in the past, but I'll just break it down as Prabhupada discussed it. So this shloka, Queen Kunti is saying to Krishna that no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, right? So basically, we are talking here about the appearance of Krishna. And as we know, Janmashtami is coming. So this topic is very dear to our heart. Why Krishna appears on this earth? Why does he come? He's enjoying himself in Golok. Why does he come to this a degraded situation, this material world, and why does he do all these pastimes? And Queen Kunti is saying those pastimes are very bewildering to us, and it appears almost human, like you behave like sometimes as a human. So Prabhupada starts by reciting the very famous verses from Bhagavad Gita 4.7 and 4.8. Why Krishna comes, he gives the reason himself that I come he says, Paritranay sadhu nam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharm sanstapnarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So he says that I come to deliver the sadhus or the devotees, people that are non-envious to me, people that are engaged in my meditation, my devotional service. So Prabhupada explains who is a sadhu. So sadhu is somebody who is on a spiritual platform. They are not on a material platform. They have already through many births they have perfected their life. These are siddh purush. So they have nothing to do with worldly. Sadhu doesn't mean like in our common terms we say, oh, this person is a true sadhu. Why? Because he's not lying. Because he's doing very he's doing a lot of charity. Because he's doing a lot of good activities, so or pious activities, so that is a sadhu. No, this has nothing to do with any worldly morality or goodness. This is somebody who's on transcendental platform. This is a person who's already delivered. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says, Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogen sevate sa gunan samatitya etan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. that those who render devotional service to me, those who serve me with devotional service, they're situated on Brahman platform, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. So they are no longer, these people, these sadhus, they are no longer in control of three modes of material nature. So then this becomes contradictory, right? Paritranai sadhunam. So if these people are already delivered, then why does Krishna come to deliver them? He says Paritranai sadhunam. So they do not require any deliverance. But Krishna comes to satisfy them. Krishna comes to engage in loving relationship with them, loving exchanges with them. Like with Arjuna, he exchanged the Sakhyaras. With Bhishma Pitama, Veeraras, and so many other. With the Yashoda Maya, with Nand Maharaj, there was Vatsalyaras, and with gopis of Gopas, there was Sakhyaras and Madhuryaras. So this is just loving exchanges. When Krishna comes, he's coming to uh, to exchange these, have these beautiful pastimes with his devotees. Not that these devotees require any deliverance from him, not that they need any protection from him. Because if it was just for protection, Krishna doesn't need to come. He can just send somebody, or even himself. He could just within, he just has to. He's residing within everybody as Paramatma. He can just annihilate any demons, anybody that is harassing his devotees within a blink. I mean, he does not need to come and enact this elaborate pastime to do that. So, so this is a loving exchange. For example, Prabhupada gave this example, like in our ordinary dealings, right? Somebody invites me to their house for dinner. Right? Doesn't mean that I can't have food at my house. It doesn't mean that if I'm going to somebody's house for dinner, to my friend's house, does that mean that does that mean that I cannot cook prasadam myself, that the friend has to feed me? No, but the friend wants to exchange in this loving relationship with us, right? As in Nectar of Instruction, Rup Goswami explains how 6 kinds of loving exchanges can happen between devotees. So how they exchange gifts with each other, how they exchange confidences with each other, how they exchange prasadam with each other, bhunte bhojayate chaiva. So that is how in our ordinary dealings also, when we exchange loving, when we want to show love to somebody, we give them gifts, we give them prasadam, or we share our confidences with them. Similarly, Krishna comes to spend time with his devotees. After all, loving exchanges are the hardest to come by. Anybody can even protect you. Anybody can give you the basic needs. That is not what he's coming for. So sadhu is always thinking of Krishna, and Krishna is always thinking of sadhu, and this is Krishna's way of showing his love for sadhu by coming here and enacting these transcendental pastimes. Actually, one of the things I heard in one of the shlokas in Bhagavad Gita, Arjun is referred to as Gudakesha. Actually, several places, Arjun's one of the names of Arjun is Gudakesha. Now, Gudakesha refers to somebody who has controlled their sleep, who has overcome, or sleep refers to, basically, philosophically, it refers to ignorance or darkness, who has overcome the darkness, who has overcome the ignorance. That is Gudakesha. But another beautiful explanation of this name this was given by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu actually. Another beautiful explanation is that Gudakesha refers, good is something very sweet, right? So, and Kesha refers to a very exalted people like Brahma and Shivji. And so Kesha refers to a person who gives the sweet love to sweet love of exchanges between a devotee and um, Krishna to demigods like Lord Brahma and to Lord Shiva. So even Lord Brahma and Shiva will get the sweetness of these loving exchanges when they see Arjun and Krishna. So who can engage Krishna in this kind of loving relationship? That is Arjuna. So that is why Arjuna is also called Gudakesha, because he engages with Krishna in such beautiful pastimes that are sweet like good. So that was, I thought that was a very nice meaning of Arjun's name, Gudakesha. So coming to this verse again, Queen Kunti is saying that no one can understand your pastimes. Chikirshitam. Chikirshitam is a very important word here. This refers to pastimes. Actually, in each line, there is one word that I'm going to try to explain. Uh, this line is Chikirshitam. Um, the second line has this word Bidambanam. So Chikirshitam means pastimes, Bidambanam means bewildering or misleading. Daito. Daito in the third line means object of specific favor. And in the last line, Dvesha. Dvesha or Bhishma. Both these words have almost similar meaning. Dvesha means object of enemy and Bhishma means partiality. So we can take Bhishma here, partiality. So we'll try to take one word at a time. Chikirshitam refers to pastimes. Now, as you remember, there is a verse in third chapter of Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says that I have no particular activity to do. This is 3.22. If you read this, Krishna says, O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. So basically, Krishna, even the next verse, Kunti Maharani will say that you are ajasya akartur. Akartur means somebody who has no activity to do. So Krishna does not need to work like us. Like we need to work like donkeys day in and day out. Krishna doesn't need to work like that. He has no work. So yet he comes and he engages in these pastimes where it looks like he's working. But the reason for these transcendental pastimes is Krishna says, okay, we talked about sadhus. He comes to um, give pleasure to sadhus, basically exchange love with loving relationships with sadhus. But demons, even demons who are killed by Krishna, it's not like he's killing them out of envy because he's non-envious. He's completely free of any envy. He has no, like here she's saying dveshyascha. So there is no dvesh, there is no object of envy for Krishna. So when he kills the demons, it's not because of envy. It's like a mother when she chastises her child who, so there are two kids. One kid is very nice. The other kid is very naughty, doing all kinds of, naughty, creating all kind of problems for the parents. So what does she do? She may call him names. She may slap him, something. She may punish him. She may like Mother Yashoda bound Krishna with ropes. Doesn't mean that she's doing this out of envy. No, but this is another way of disciplining the child. This is another way of showing favor to the child because that is best for him. So when he's killing the demons, he's not killing like we kill. When we, when a human being murders anybody, they're doing that out of envy. But when Krishna is killing these demons, he's doing that only so that they will actually achieve salvation, even the demons that are killed by him. So you probably know how Putna, when she tried to poison baby Krishna, right? And he sucked on her breast, and he said, "Okay, if I sucked on her breast, then this makes her my mother." So she got the position of mother in the Vaikuntha. So she gets such a high position, even though she was full of envy and was trying to kill Lord Krishna. But he is not full of envy. So he gives salvation even to the demons that are killed by him. So this is not material jealousy. We cannot compare his activities with ours because when we do things, they're completely material or worldly in nature. They're complete, full of jealousy. And that is why we get bewildered because he comes as a human and we think, okay, so this has to be another human when whatever he does, we compare with our activities. So if he's killing somebody, it must be like us, material jealousy to protect himself, to out of enviousness, no. But his mood is that of the Lord of all creation. He's the Father, the Param Parmeshwar. So he's not. Let me just open another shloka that I remembered. And this is a very, very famous shloka. Some of you may actually have memorized it. This is said by Uddhav to Vidura. Aho bakiyam stankalkutam jigham saya payadapya sadvi lebe gatim dhatri uchitam taton anyam kam va dayalum sharanam vrajem. So here Uddhav is saying to Vidura that, alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he who granted the position of mother to a she demon, Putna, although she was unfaithful and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. So this is what I was referring to, how she got the position of mother, even though she was full of envy. But he was so dayalu. He's saying, "Kam va dayalu sharanam brajema." How can I take shelter of such most merciful Lord who granted the position of mother to the she demon Putna? So nobody is his enemy. He's not, when he's killing people, it's not because they're his enemy. He's not killing like that. So um, and that is what is bewildering to people. Vidambanam. Vidambanam is bewildering, vidambana, or misleading. So when he comes, the famous example comes how like a prime minister visits a prison house. Doesn't mean that the prime minister is in the same position as other prisoners of the jail. He's just coming to visit. He's in an authoritative position. He's beyond the laws of the jail. You cannot force him to eat the same food that they're eating, wear the same clothes that they're wearing. No, his clothes are different. He is eating different things. He comes with his own crew. There are followers with him that are coming to inspect the jail, right? Just like Krishna come with his own parshads, his own consorts, eternal consorts that accompany him when he comes, right? So similarly, it's that analogy is given in this regard, and he can come and go at his own free will. He's not bound like us. We take birth. We do not have any control on where we take birth, which family, which country, with what kind of body, brown, black, white. We have no control on that. But when Krishna appears, it is out of completely his own free will. When he leaves, completely out of his own free will. It's not like Gandhari cursed him, so he was forced to die and to be killed by a hunter. I mean, he got shot in the foot by an arrow. Even I won't die with the arrow getting shot in the foot. So that is not that is his plan when he wants to leave. So this is his free will. He's not subject to the rules. Just like a PM who visits the jail is not subjected to the rules of the prison. But the prisoners will think, oh, this guy is here. So maybe he also did something bad. Maybe he also committed some crime. That's why he's in the jail. Because they are full of envy. So they're behaving like a common person who has no knowledge, and he doesn't understand that this is PM, this is Prime Minister. He doesn't understand that his clothes are completely different. So we don't understand that Krishna's body is completely spiritual. So in the same way, when that prime minister does different activities, they think, okay, he must be being told by the jailer to do these things. No, he is telling the jailer what to do. So he's above and beyond those rules. He can leave whenever he wants. So so that's just an analogy I wanted to share. So then Vidambanam also refers to, so many pastimes that Krishna, especially in his Swayam Roop, his Krishna form, I mean, even in other forms, there are many pastimes that are bewildering to people, but especially in this particular, his original form, when he comes, that is most bewildering to people, because all his various pastimes, like stealing butter from gopis. So when he's stealing butter, it's not that he cannot, I mean, he's the son of the king, Nand Maharaj. They have millions of cows. He's no dearth of butter in their house. So when he's stealing, it's a loving exchange with gopis. We cannot compare with us when we steal things. Similarly, stealing, similarly Ras Leela. So when he's dancing with so many gopis, crores of gopis, that pastime is completely bewildering to ordinary humans. Uh, uh, during the war, like how Duryodhan was defeated by Bhima, or how Krishna lifted the wheel to run after Bhishma Pitama. All these things, unless you understand the details, unless we get some knowledge, and then Krishna has his own plans. with one pastime, he accomplishes many tasks, many objects he has with that one pastime. Why he's called Ranchor, why he ran away from the battlefield. So we can either engage in these stories and try to understand the pastimes, or we can become envious and condemn, which Krishna says, avjananti mamumura manusham tanumashritim param bhavam avajananto mam bhut maheshwaram. That foolish people do not understand when I take this body as a human, and they think I'm a human, I'm an ordinary human, but they do not understand my supreme nature, param bhavam avjananto. So they don't understand my supreme nature. So, or we can be that mura that Krishna is talking about in Bhagavad Gita. So it is our choice, either become non-envious and take delight in these pastimes, try to learn more about Krishna. Krishna is unlimited. We will never be able to learn all about him. We should know that. But by engaging in these pastimes, we can engage our senses in these beautiful pastimes and delight everybody around us with them, or become envious and start condemning and be a mura. Another why Krishna accepted 16,000 wives. So that is again something that 16,108 wives. That is again, Krishna is Jagatpati. He's Jagannath. I'm seeing Suresh Prabhu's icon here of Lord Jagannath. He's Jagannath, so he's Jagatpati. He's Pati of everybody, any man, woman, anybody. So if he accepted 16,108 wives, well, how does it matter? He's everybody's Pati. There is this verse where in Bhagavad Gita, Arjun refers to him as Jagatpati. So, and there is a Hindi saying, I can't remember exactly, someone might remember here, where they say, 16,108 nari, fir bhi brahmachari, something like that. So he's completely renounced. That is one of his opulences. He's completely renounced. So if he's accepting those 16,108 princesses, this is to give them shelter, and for many other reasons, many other reasons that we've learned from our acharyas or in the scriptures. But it is not because of lust, is basically what I'm trying to say. Whereas if we compare him to us, we think, oh, this is, if somebody has more than one woman in their life, then it may be because of lust. But no, we are all his part and parcels. We are all his ansh, right? Mam evam amsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana, right? Everybody, Krishna says, they're all my part and parcels. Everything comes from him. Aham sarvasya prabhuvo. I'm everybody's Prabhu. I'm everybody's Lord, he says. Matta sarvam pravartiti. So if everything is coming from him, why can't he accept his own? I mean, this is all his only. He's not taking anybody else's. So we always but compare with us, and that's why people get bewildered. That's why this vidambana comes. So this is just his reciprocation with devotees, and that devotees that understand these pastimes, they understand that when he's playing like ordinary child, he may be playing like an ordinary child at one point, and then the next second later, he's showing the whole universe in his mouth to Mother Yashoda, right? He's driving chariot like ordinary man, and then next minute he's giving he's speaking the whole Bhagavad Gita and showing his universal form to Arjuna. So that is not an ordinary man. That is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So let's go to the next word in the third line. In the third line, Queen Kunti says, "Na yasya kaschit daito asti karhichit." So daito means, here Prabhupada says, object of specific favor. You have no object of favor. So Krishna does not need any favor. For example, when we make relationships, we do that with some kind of selfish motive behind it, right? If we have friends, then we need, some kind of favor, some kind of either for emotional support, for material support, to engage with somebody in some gossiping or communication, or things like that. So for various mental, physical, emotional support, we have various relationships. But he does not. He's Atmaram, right? He does not need any favor. No one can give anything to Krishna, right? If we say that, okay, I'm giving this bhoga to Krishna, we're not giving this bhoga. This everything belongs to him. Everything is coming from him, and everything belongs to him. You cannot give anything to Krishna. When you are giving something, that is for your own purification. When you are, because you're just showing to Krishna, I know that nothing belongs to me. So this is a gesture that of my understanding that this all belongs to you. So please accept this also. This is already, everything is yours. So that is how the devotees are. They know that nothing belongs to them. That is why they're not bewildered when they lose any possessions, because even though a devotee may be living in opulent positions like Mother Kunti or Pandavas, they were in a very Maharaj Yudhishthir was the king of Indraprastha, and then everything was taken away from them. But even in the forest, they were not bewildered, because they understand that nothing belongs to them. So even if it is taken away, they are same in both situations. So when suddenly there is reversal of the situation, they are not bewildered. So the mood of the devotee is not that I'm giving something to you. The mood is that I know this is all yours, but this is just a gesture, because Krishna has, because that is the injunctions of the scripture. And Krishna says himself, right? Yat karoshi yadashnasi yat juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kauntaya tat kurushva madarpanam. That offer everything to me. So even it is all his, he's complete. He's full. He's perfect. But we just show our love by giving him something. Like we always say that if a small child gives a flower to his mother, or makes a small card for her mother, it doesn't mean that mother needed it. Mother has more money, or father has more money than anything, but the child spent their $1 to get something, or made some effort to give the father or mother something, and that will give them delight. So it is for the delight of Krishna. It is to please them, please Krishna, that we do this, make any kind of offerings. So we offer everything to Krishna, whatever work we do, whatever we eat, whatever relationships, everything everything we give to Krishna. So basically that is for our own benefit, for our own purification. This is what Prabhupada said in the purport. Little bit difficult to understand, but I'll try to share. So for example, so it is said that even in Bible, this is said that man is made in the image of God, right? God made man in his own image, in his own form. We know that Krishna's original form is the two-handed form, and going by that same injunctions, man is made in that form, right? So Prabhupada put it in this way, that basically we are just his reflection, right? He's the original person and we are just his reflection. Now, if let's say I'm looking in the mirror and I'm trying to look beautiful, so what I would do, I'd put some makeup on myself, right? So when I put makeup on the original person, the reflection will also look beautiful, right? That if the person's reflected in the mirror will also look beautiful. But you cannot put makeup on the mirror and try to dress up the reflection. That will not help. The reflection will not look beautiful. So to make the reflection look beautiful, the original person has to be dressed up. We have to do everything for the original person, then only the reflection will look beautiful. So similarly, if we are a reflection of Krishna, then we have to do everything for Krishna, and we cannot do anything for him, but we try on our end to make him look beautiful with our actions. So dress up the deities, offer food to Krishna, do your work for him, everything, right? And then we will also shine. So because the original person, or like we say always, if you water the root, that is a more common analogy given, if you water the root, the whole plant gets nourishment, right? So Krishna is the root. He's the Adi Devam. He's the source of everything. He's the original person. If you do everything for him, then you, who's a part of him, who's just a little leaf on that big tree, then you will also get the nourishment. So that is how our consciousness gets purified. So we get the benefit by doing everything for Krishna. So that is another different analogy that I had never heard. Prabhupada has given that in this lecture. So yes, so we do these things for our own purification, and then to show our love and servitude, and also to attract Krishna's attention, right? To improve our faith, our devotion, our chanting, right? And then to keep our consciousness clean and advance on the spiritual platform. That is why we do these things. So, but Krishna has no object of specific favor. He does not need anything. And he says, Sarvadharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. So this shows our surrender. This shows that we have come into your shelter, that we are surrendering to him by offering him everything, so that we are seeking his shelter. So this was Dveshyas. And the last word here is Vishma. Vishma is basically partiality. So Queen Kunti says, people only imagine that you are partial. So I'll share a very famous shloka from Bhagavad Gita here, where Krishna himself says that I'm not partial. And we have discussed this concept before of partiality and impartiality. But here, 9.29, Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dvesho asti na priya ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya maite teshu chapi aham. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I'm also a friend to him. So he clearly says, Samoham sarva bhuteshu, that I'm equal to all living entities. Name dvesho asti na priya, that nobody's dear to me and nobody's, I'm not envious to, or hateful to anybody or partial to anybody. So we have taken this analogy many times, right, of the teacher and the student. The teacher is not partial to any of her students, but depending on the student's performance or how they write the exam, she has to give the marks. So she has to score it based on, if somebody answered only 50 questions correct out of 100, then she has to give 50. It's not that she's being partial to that student. If somebody answered 100 correct out of 100, then she will give 100 to that student. If somebody answered nothing, then she will fail him. But it's not like she's partial to that particular student. So the student that failed can say, oh, you are partial to me. You did not give me any, you gave me 0. But you didn't score anything. You didn't answer anything. So you didn't get a score. So that is how Krishna is. He is impartial, but based on our service to him, whoever renders, he clearly says, Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya. You want to come, he gives us free will. He is not forcing us, come to me. You know, he's not dragging us. No, he's given us so many shlokas in Bhagavad Gita where he gives us so many different ways to come to him. He keeps saying, this is how you can attain me. This is how you can achieve me. Yen mam upyantite, mam evye prapadyante. So many ways he says that how you can come to me. Almost 50%, 60% of the shlokas he keeps saying how you can come to me. So why don't we pick those his injunctions and follow them and go to him? But people that are not trying to go to him, then they won't go to him. So basically he says, whoever renders service unto me is a friend, is in me, and I'm also a friend to him. So this is free will. He's not forcing us to like him, to pray to him. He's giving us an option. You can do this or that. So so that is how he's impartial. And we know that in Bhagavatam later on in 7th canto that we have completed last year, this conversation happens between Yudhishthir Maharaj and Narad Muni, where Yudhishthir Maharaj has the same doubt that how can you say Krishna is impartial? We can clearly see that he favors his devotees. And then the whole discussion follows how we realize that Krishna is actually impartial, and based on our reciprocation with him, Krishna will respond. And he says that in 4th chapter also, very famous verse 4.11, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam stathaiva bhajamyaham Mam vartamanu vartante manushya partha sarvasha. So based on your reciprocation, I will also respond. Let's see if I have anything. Another example that was given was of the sunlight. Actually, it was given in the shloka itself, I think, of the sunlight. That sunlight or sun is not partial. But if we decide to stay inside and close our curtains, then that is on us, right? We decided not to. We made this decision not to go out into the sunlight. So if we are not getting any warmth or nourishment from sun, then we cannot say, oh, sun is partial. But you decided to hide inside the house. So if you decide to come out, you will also, sunlight is there for everybody. So similarly, Krishna's love is there for everybody. His reciprocation, those loving exchanges that bewilder people so much are for everybody. But if we decide to take that path of bhakti, engage in devotional service and engage in, then we can engage in those pastimes and relish those pastimes, try to understand them. We can discuss with each other. Krishna says, those people are so dear to me that discuss my pastimes and teach each other about my pastimes. We can become dear to Krishna also and get his love and warmth. Hare Krishna, that's all I have to share on this shloka. I think we are out of time. So if anybody would like to ask any questions.